Hi, everybody. My name is Angelee. I'm from over here at Shonnard's. I have been working here for a little over a year and a half now, and I'm really excited to teach this class. I got the chance to do it last year, and since then I've been able to add a little bit, and perfect a little bit, and learn a little bit more. So I'm really excited to get to teach you about garlic today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Post them in the comment section below if you're here on YouTube, and we'll figure out what questions you got. We'll make this easy for you to go into growing garlic. Oh, we're really starting to get some people in now. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen and I'll get started on the presentation for you guys. Alrighty. All right, give me a second here. I want to get everything situated. If you have any questions, again, feel free to pop on and we'll figure it out. So this is your road ahead. I'm laying out a little roadmap here, trying to make it as easy as possible to grow garlic for you, because it can be easy as an overwintering crop. Overwintering crops are generally easy, and that's what we try to expect from them. So first, we're going to be talking about picking your onion and garlic types, what you want to keep in mind as you go in doing that. We're going to talk about the growing conditions that they would love to have and what's going to make them grow big and strong. We're going to talk about planting specifics, how to get them in the ground and how to get them started on the right foot. We're going to talk about winter care. Like I said, because they're an overwintering crop, they're generally kind of easier than your like summer hardy or your summer crops, you know, your lettuces. You pretty much can set them, forget them, you just feed them and they're good to go, especially here in the Pacific Northwest where we get a good steady amount of rain. We're gonna let you know what kind of pests and diseases to look out for. Just to let you know, prevention is key. Try not to run into them. Then we're going to talk about harvesting them and what you can do to make them last for a good amount of time for storage. Alrighty, so with that being said, we're going to just go ahead and get started. So picking your onions and garlic. Some things to keep in mind. Size matters. When you're looking at these cloves, you want to pick the biggest one, the most healthiest one. You want to look at health for any different spotting, any mushy spots. You want it to be as healthy as possible. And you want that skin left on there because that skin, that paper skin on it, helps prevent from any bacterial issues, diseases, fungal problems. Next thing you're going to think about is storage life. Are you going to be eating them right away, or do you want them to last a few months in your pantry? Is organic an issue for you? Do you want organic? These organic seed stocks, I don't think generally work with garlic, but we do carry a good stock of organic garlic in. It is a little more difficult for the growers to produce them. Generally, they're a little more expensive because of this, but here at Shonnard's, we have an average price set between conventional and garlic, so you can get a really good price for that organic garlic. Lastly, all the seed stock that we're carrying here at Shonnard's is certified for our area, so you know what you're going to get is going to work here, and it's geared for the problems that we are likely to arrive with in our area. So garlic types, we're going to get into the specifics of those. Hardneck, the general difference between garlic is hardneck and softneck. So hardneck are going to be a little more spicy right at harvest. They're going to be a little bit shorter for storage time, however. Softnecks have a long storage time of about 6 to 8 months. They're generally what you see when people are braiding garlic. And I have different varieties listed here. Those are the types that we have here at Shonnard's. Hardneck, we have German red. Music, I find that music is very popular and flying right off the shelf. Spanish roja, and German porcelain. I like hardnecks because I love my face to kind of burn when I'm eating garlic. I love my nasal cavities to get cleared up. But that's just me. And then softneck is very popular as it's the storage type. You get great clove yields. There's lots of different varieties available, and you can learn to braid them, which is fun. I threw elephant garlic on here because it's called elephant garlic. However, it's actually a leek technically. It can be grown very similar to garlic. It's going to be very hungry and very ready for fertilizer and very much the same way. The difference is they have huge cloves. You can kind of see in that picture over there. That's the one I just harvested this year. Edible leaves and like a medium to long storage. And there's like a closer picture of me with that elephant garlic. It's seriously like bigger than my hand. I only grew one of them. The cloves are huge, but a lot of fun. And this is an example of the selection that we have here at Shonnard's. This is a picture I actually took of our section here. You can see all the different types, some labeled organic. And like I said, prices are averaged out here, so you're paying the same for each in the bulk. It's looking gorgeous. It's smelling even better. Onions, there are different types of onions that you maybe need to be paying attention to. There's these short day onions and long day onions, and that refers to how much sun there is when that bulb is really going to start forming. Here, we're going to really be focusing on long day onions. That's what we see here. That's what you're going to be likely finding at Shonnard's. Right now, we have some sets, red Weatherfield, Huckleberry Gold, and little snowballs. The red, yellow, and white. These are going to be bunching types that you're going to see that growth spurt towards the end of May, and with the bulb formation in June, July, when that daylight hits that 14-hour. Intermediate you can also grow around here. They don't care about daylight, they just care about time in the soil. But mostly you're going to be seeing long day onion bulbs around here. Okay, so there's the basic specifics on picking it. You can't go wrong with picking it, I wouldn't say. So here is a little bit more specific information about where you're going to want to be planting your garlic. You want to get your hands in that soil, you're going to get dirty, you want to get to know what you're working with. Some site specifics, garlic's really going and onions really going to want full sun. And that means 6 to 8 hours of sun a day. Here in Oregon, we know that our daylights get shorter and shorter throughout the winter. That means sun positioning changes, so you're going to want to pay attention to sun angle because they really want that 6 to 8 hours all winter long. Additionally, understand your soil types. Get your hands in there, feel it. What does it feel like? Are you working with native soils? Here in the Willamette Valley, we find that our soils are extremely heavy in clay and very compact. That's gonna impact your nutrient availability and your water availability. Raised beds, you're gonna find the soil to maybe be much easier to work with, as well as containers with potting soil. The soil types, the texture, what it can hold varies wildly between native and container. So you got to understand what you're working with, because with native soils, you're going to be watering much less in the winter, whereas if it's in a container, that soil is going to dry a lot more. With potting soil, there's perlite, there's drainage in there. So just be sure you know what you're working with. Water availability. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we get tons of rain in the winter. That means we hardly are going to have to bust out that hose to get these guys moist. And nutrient availability. Onions and garlic are extremely heavy feeders. They want lots of nitrogen, like lots and lots and lots. So in native soils, it can be a little hard for them to pillage for that nitrogen through our native soils. So you got to help them by adding in organic material and heavy, rich nitrogen fertilizers. Another extremely important thing is crop rotation. You don't want to be planting your garlic in the same exact spot every year, because then you're going to be inviting pests and diseases to that plot of land. They're going to be, hey, I know that I love garlic and I found it here in this spot last year, so I'm going to wait here for that garlic to come back. You want to keep these things on their toes, switch it out. Avoid alliums, which is the family of garlic. You're going to want to go to different plant families, such as nightshades. You're going to want to plant your tomatoes there. Maybe go to strawberries and put some rosaceae family in there. You're going to want to really think about crop rotation, because it's important for not only nutrient availability, but disease and pest prevention. All right. So soil needs. I keep saying that these guys are extremely hungry, and that's a fact. High in nitrogen, that's what we're looking for. Lots of organic matter, lots of nitrogen. Additionally, they want well-draining soil. So if you're container gardening with potting soil with perlite, you're good to go. But if you're doing native soils, you might want to consider mounding your soil up and planting at the tip of that mound, so that the water can shed off and exit without fully saturating your plant. Give me a second here. All right. So pH needs to be reasonable. You're not going to want to be planting these guys with your azaleas and rhododendrons, your acid-loving plants, or your blueberries. They really want it to be around that 6-7 range. If you're worried about your soil, you can always provide or buy test kits from our store. And if you need to balance it out, which likely if you're using native soil or even bagged potting soil, you're not going to have to, but you can use lime and sulfur to either increase or minus the pH, as well as help increase nutrient uptake and increase better flavors and better yields. So it helps add diversity and helping that plant uptake the nitrogen. So again, they're hungry. They really want nitrogen, lots of nitrogen. You can add nitrogen in your soil by putting in soil amendments and adding a compost mulch over the top. Fertilize. You want to fertilize, trust me. You can also incorporate cover crops into your crop rotation, and just always please practice good crop rotation. You're going to thank yourself, and your soil is going to thank you if you do that. So here in the pictures around the edges, I have provided some of my favorite products that we carry here in store. The Harvest Supreme is really great for drainage adding, and it also has chicken manure in it, so it's got some added nitrogen in there. The Soil Building Conditioner is really great for helping break up your native soils. So if you're going to be digging in there, consider adding some Soil Building Conditioner. Right below the Soil Building Conditioner is a granular tomato, vegetable, and herb fertilizer. Highly recommend getting this granular fertilizer for your whole vegetable garden, but also for your garlic. This GB Organic, it is organic, which means it's extremely hard to burn your plants with it, which means you can just put it right in that hole with your garlic bulb, because these guys are hungry. They're really going to appreciate all the food you can give them. Over on this right-hand side, I have provided different composts that I really like. The Seacoast compost is very thick with organic matter. There is no tree bark mulch in it. It is just pure organic matter. The planting compost is a really nice mix that does have some of that bark mulch in it to help increase drainage. The seacoast compost is really great for moisture editing. And the chicken manure, might want to plan a little bit ahead, putting that into your soil, but really I'd hit it hard. Mulching over the top when after planting, we'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, with the planting compost or the seacoast compost to really give it a lot of that organic matter. Plus mulching helps get rid of seeds, or sorry, helps stop weed seeds from coming up, helps create a even temperature and an even moisture availability. So let's continue on. I hope that was some good information. Again, if you guys have questions, feel free to pop up in here and ask, or plop them into the chat. So garlic, it has a little bit of specifics on its own. It must have well-draining soil. It's not going to want its feet to be saturated. Again, mounding is great for our area in native soil to help boost it up and get it away from the saturation that it's going to be experiencing because it rains so heavily here in the winter. It wants the soil moist, but not saturated. If you have any experience watering, you know that it can be like a fine line in between there. I highly recommend sticking your finger in, getting to know your soil. Nothing replaces touching the soil, getting to know it, sticking your finger in, feeling how deep you can go before you actually start feeling some moisture in. So get to know your soil. Don't feel weird about it. It's what we got to do as gardeners. And again, they love high nitrogen fertilizer frequently. We'll talk more about a fertilizing schedule. Just know they're hungry. They've got a lot of production to do of bulbs in the winter months where it's hard to grow. So they just want all the help they can get. Some onion / shallot specifics. They have very similar growth habits. So we're going to kind of be lumping them in together. They're a little bit more tolerant of moist soils than garlic. So if you have like two sections of your yard where one stays a little drier, one gets a little more moist, you might want to put your onions where it stays a little more moist than your garlic where it stays a little drier. They can withstand a little bit more wider pH range than garlic does. But just because they can doesn't mean they should. So really, they're going to want that 6-7 pH range. But don't let yourself stress out on it. You know, that's normally what you're going to find in our soil. So now we're going to talk about the fun part, planting. How do I plant? How do I actually get these babies in the soil? I've got them from the store now. I've got bulbs. How do I get them in the soil to start growing? First, you're going to want to prepare your soil. Like I said, these bad boys, they like drainage. They don't want to be saturated. So you can help increase drainage by digging the soil around where you're going to plant about 6 inches deep. So you're not going to be planting that deep. But if you dig deeper than you're going to plant, it decreases compaction, introduces more air bubbles for water to flow through. Additionally, it'll help with nutrient availability. As you're preparing your soil, you want to do what you can to increase the nitrogen availability in your soil. And you can do this, like I mentioned, with amendments, cover crops, crop rotation, and composting. Or mulching is what I mean, using compost as a mulch. Consider using compost mulch. You want to keep it at around 2 inches thick. You really want that thickness. It's going to help keep an even moisture, and it's going to help reduce weed propagation. And finally, when you dig your hole to actually plant the bulb in, you want to sprinkle granular fertilizer in there, especially if it's the GB organic, because you can't burn with it. So sprinkle it in there, make sure you get it in there, touching that bulb so you're just ready to go. And if you know nothing about bulb planting, don't fret. I'm going to break it down here for you. Try to plant it when you can. Don't let it sit in your drawer for too long. Don't allow it to rot, soften, or sprout. Get it in the soil. Each clove of the garlic plant is going to be its whole own new plant. So you're gonna, as you can see in that very top picture, that's what you're gonna find like at the grocery store, the whole garlic head. At the very bottom picture, that's one single clove that's gonna end up being the plant. You're gonna want to identify where the roots are coming from and where the green shoots are going to come from once it starts growing. So you can see the roots come from this more flat spot at the bottom of the bulb, where the shoots come from where it's a little more pointy at the end. I hope this picture helps break it down for you and makes it a little more clear. When in doubt, just plant it sideways. It'll figure it out on its own. It'll curve and grow up towards the sun, towards the surface. They know which way's up. But if you plant it upside down, you're gonna really set back its growth or even stop it altogether. When in doubt, do sideways. Do not remove the skins from the plant. As I said earlier, it will help prevent any bacterial or fungal issues. Bulbs are hungry. If I haven't drilled that into you enough yet, listen now, because bulbs are hungry. Get that fertilizer in there, get that nitrogen in there, get that compost mulch in there, do all you can for it. Rotate it. If you planted your garlic there last year, don't do it again. Put it in a different spot. Get new soil if it's in a container. Prevention is key. You want to make your plants as healthy as possible when you can, so that they can fight off any issues they might come into, and they can grow nice and big for you. All right. So garlic bulb planting. Woo! So your holes, they don't have to be very deep. They're only going to go about 2 to 3 inches deep. You're going to want to plant them further apart, though, so they have time to really bulk up and really provide a large bulb for you at about 4 to 6 inches apart. You can always plant them a little closer together and eat them as green garlic, pull them prematurely, eat them as green garlic. Soft garlic, you can do this, or soft neck garlic, you can do this for a while throughout the growing season. However, hard neck garlic begins to get too hard to really want to eat as green around end of November. Again, add granular fertilizer directly into that hole. They're going to want as much nitrogen touching the bulb as they can to really just start growing, start going. They got a lot to make. Elephant garlic, you saw how big that thing gets. The actual bulb it grows is like huge. The cloves are huge. So you're going to want to plant them like 4 to 6 inches deep and then 6 to 8 inches apart. The cool thing about elephant garlic is the leaves are edible, so you can eat that as you go. You're going to want to cover it with that deep of soil, and then also ensure that 2 inches of compost mulch are over the top. This will help increase nutrient availability. It helps maintain moisture, helps prevent weeds, and helps add organic material into the soil. Water if needed. See, this is where the tricky part comes in because it matters. There's no easy answer I can give you on when to water, because it all matters on how much soil you have, what type of soil you have, how much organic material is in there, how much it's been raining. So really, like I said, you just gotta get in there. You gotta touch that soil. You gotta figure out what you're working with, see how compacted it is, and how much moisture it's going to hold. And really the best way to learn is to stick your finger in that soil, feel the moisture with your hand. And again, fertilize bulbs after planting. I like to do like immediately after planting, like when you would water a plant in after planting, and then use a organic liquid fertilizer. I might touch on it again, but the granular is a long-term fertilizer. It is slow release, it'll stay in the soil. Liquid fertilizer is a pretty quick acting fertilizer, so that'll really just trigger it to get it going. Oops, I think I went backwards. Onions, planting onions. So planting onions can get a little confusing because there's different steps that can be done through. Garlic, we're planting clove bulbs. You can also do that with onions at this time. We call them bulbs or sets. There are other times of the year where you can be doing other things. We'll touch on, let's get into it. A lot of people like to start onions from seeds. I would mention to always follow the instructions on the package. On the right-hand side, you can see they provide lots of really great information. Onions don't necessarily like to be transplanted. I'd like to recommend that you direct seed for best results. They can stand to be transplanted, but so don't let it deter you. But ideally, they would be direct sowed right into the soil they're going to grow into. What's fun about onions too is they're really easy to overseed so that you can thin them and eat them as they grow. Bunches or tray packs, you might see these in the spring around here at Shonnard's. Those ones we're just touching on. We're going to get more into the sets and bulbs. So plant them about 4 to 6 inches apart. Plant when the soil is dry. Avoid letting the bunch dry out or rot. Tray packs are started seed and are delicate, so I would recommend thinning them out versus trying to separate them. And by doing this and starting in the spring this way, you have the overwintering part done for you, and you can just start in the spring with that easy instant satisfaction. Now we're going to be talking about overwintering these bad boys. These bulbs or sets, they're cute, they're tiny. There's an example of one in my hand there. These ones you're going to want to plant about 3 inches deep and 3 inches apart. Make sure to fertilize at planting and consistently throughout growing season, just like a garlic. So you're going to want to put granular fertilizer in there, cover it with soil, compost mulch it, and then liquid feed on top of that. Shallots, they're a lot like onions, but when you plant them, they want the tips to be showing. Just to really poke out immediately. You're going to want to give them extra space for growing out, about 8 inches, because they are bunching and they're going to get wide and big. So they need all the extra space they can to do their bunching habitat. Winter care, the more difficult part of growing garlic and onions. Like I said, because it's an overwintering crop, it is generally maybe a little more easier than the other things you might deal with. But the specifics you're going to want to keep in mind because it's an overwintering crop, it makes it have such a slow or short growing period because plants really just don't like to grow when the temperature goes below 50 degrees. So they need little care over the winter to thrive because they're not going to be doing much growing during the winter, but during the fall and the spring late fall, early spring is really when the go time begins to start doing things. So we're going to get into it. Mainly, if you're going to remember anything, it's to fertilize in the fall and the spring. Like I said, growth slows significantly when temperatures go below 55. So they have very little and limited time of actual growth. So garlic, onions, shallots, elephant garlic, leeks can all be fed in pretty similar ways. It's important to note the difference between a liquid and a granular and why you're going to want to use both. They're going to really work together best together, better together. So a granular is going to be the grains you can physically spread about with your hands. It is slow release, which means it's going to provide a consistent food throughout the growing season. This is going to be important because they're hungry. They want it consistently. Whereas the liquid is more instant, easier to take up through the root systems, and is more actionable. You're going to see more results in these colder temperatures because it's harder for them to pick up that slow release granular, whereas the liquid is just quick action. So you're going to want to use granular at planting, then liquid feed as temperatures drop. You're going to want to fertilize at planting throughout mid-November. Then once temperatures start to drop, you're starting to see that 55 degree, then you can just pretty much just stop fertilizing until temperatures begin to rise again in February. Then you're going to want to hit it again with fertilizing every 2 weeks with liquid, and I would recommend using the granular at least like every month, making sure it's in there. But during those growing seasons, when the temperature is ideal, you're really going to be wanting to fertilize it every 2 weeks to get a good bulb formation. So it's important to note that growth will be slow. They're hungry, they're competing for those resources, so you're going to want to control the weeds within 8 inches of your plant. This includes space from your winter cover crop. You want them to not be stressed out at all. You want to give them their space to do their thing and the food to be able to do it. Because of this, I would maintain a 2-inch mulch of compost. It might get blown away, it might get rained away throughout the winter. Just keep an eye on it. It helps maintain that moistness, reduce weeds, and help maintain temperatures throughout the season. You can see me watering there. That's a picture of me watering summer crops. Going into winter here at Pacific Northwest, you're not going to be seeing a lot of watering like this unless it's a gorgeous day like you can see it is here. The sky is blue, I'm wearing my hat. Those are about the times when you're going to want to think about watering, and you're going to want to stick your finger in that soil, see if it's moist. If it's moist, it's probably fine until it rains again. So, water if needed, moist, not saturated. Get to know your soil, stick your hands in there, figure out how much it's going to be draining, how long it can hold on to that water. And another thing to mention is flowerscapes. So both garlic and onions and elephant garlic will put off flowers. And that's totally normal. Don't freak out. You can leave the garlic ones on there. It's not going to harm the plant. You can eat them. You can also, but on the onion ones, they are detrimental to the health of your onions. So get them off there. If you're really looking for storage, you want no scapes left on your onions. The garlic ones are just fine and can also be eaten. So that's not a lot. For winter maintenance, for months of having a plant in the ground, that's pretty easy. I hope that made you guys feel confident, and if you have any questions, let me know. We're going to keep moving on. Pests and diseases. These are frequent things you might find on your garlic: gray mold, white mold, root rot, rust, aphids, onion bulb fly, maggot. The problem with onions and garlic is they grow below ground, so by the time you're seeing and noticing these issues, it might be too late. So the ideal thing is prevention. Prevention is key. You can prevent issues with your plants by having a good crop rotation. Like I mentioned earlier, pests and diseases will find your plant one year. They'll be like, I know garlic gets planted here and I love it. So they'll come back next year because they know that garlic was planted here last year. So if you switch it up on them, plant something else there, your tomatoes there, they're not going to know what hit them. So keep them on their toes. This also helps with nutrient availability in your soil and just overall soil health. Feeding them, making sure they have plenty of food, and making sure they don't dry out as well. Making sure your plant is healthy and robust as possible so that it can fight off these issues if it comes into contact with them. Prevention is key. Harvest and storage. This is the fun part. This is what we're all looking forward to. One second. So we've done all the winter care. We've gone through the coldest part of the winter. It's come up on February. We've resumed feeding our plants. They're just bulking up. You're going to start seeing the leaves yellow around mid-June, sorry. Around mid-June, you're going to start seeing the leaves yellow. And once you start seeing leaves yellow, that means it's about 2 to 3 weeks before harvest time, which means you want to stop watering. This is going to help prepare your garlic and your onions for storage, for being pulled and being stored. If you lost sight of your garlic, you didn't see when the leaves started yellowing, around mid-June to July is harvest time. When in doubt, second week of June. Stop watering second week of June. For onions, you'll see them flop. They'll just completely flop over. Garlic will just yellow, look a little sad. Garlic will flop over and tell you that it's time around mid-June to July. When in doubt, stop watering second week of June. When you're going to pull these bad boys out of the soil, you're going to want to be as gentle as possible. They're very delicate right there at the soil level where the bulb and the shoot meet. So you're really going to want to get in there, use your thumb to help steady it, get as close to that bulb as possible, and be gentle as you rip it out of the soil so that you don't lose your bulb in the soil. You're not going to want to clean these bad boys off right away. You're just going to want to gently rub off any excess dirt while you get started for the storage process. You're going to want to put it in a dry, dark room that's relatively warm, not cold, for about 2 to 3 weeks. This will really start getting them cured. After this 2 to 3 week period, that's when you can then go in, clip the roots, remove the very outer layer of paper to get that excess soil off. You're going to leave most of the paper on there. And yeah, just don't worry about any excess dirt that's left on there. It's not a big deal. It's not going to cause problems. This is when you can then start braiding it and leaving it there to be ready to use when you want it. Right. I'm willing to take any questions if you have them at this time. That's the end of my speech. If you missed anything, don't worry about it. This is going to be updated to YouTube. I am seeing a question in the chat box right now I'm going to answer. I'm seeing any problem with using drip irrigation with garlic or onions. The only issue I would say is if you live in the Pacific Northwest here, you know the weather is very unpredictable in the winter. We're going to have really wet weeks, and then we're going to have really warm weeks. So if it's an automatic system, it might water when things have already been watered and rained on. So I would worry about it oversaturating at that point. But as long as you're keeping an eye on it, if you're triggering it to do it on its own, when you can tell that it's dry and needs it, that's totally fine. As long as you can keep the area moist and not saturated, that's fine. And drip, I always recommend drip for things because it helps save water, really. I'm seeing what kind of liquid fertilizer do I recommend? Yeah, I recommend GB organic liquid fertilizer. We have a high growth fertilizer. I'll see if I can find a picture of it. Oh, well, we carry GB organic fertilizers, and we have 2 different kinds of liquids, maybe 3. I think there might be a high bloom one. There's the all-purpose, and then there's a high green growth one with a very high nitrogen. I would recommend using the high green growth, but the all-purpose will work just as fine as well. I thought I had some pictures in here. Sorry if I'm making you guys sick. Well, anyway, GB organic fertilizer. Like I said, it's hard to burn plants with organic fertilizer, so you're really good to go with liquid and granular on that. Always follow the dilution recommendations. But yeah, a little less stress on the organic stuff. Alaska fish fertilizer. That is really great fertilizer as well. I would go with that too. How to store after clipping roots and braiding. So you just want to keep them in like an average temperatured room. Dark or light doesn't really matter. I think professionals say light is better. So you can literally just set it in the corner of your kitchen. If you're keeping it out in your garage, maybe bring it in when it starts to get cold so that it doesn't freeze. As long as it's not freezing and it's not cooking, it's fine. Anywhere you got an even temperature is good. Does anyone else have any questions? Some good questions. I really appreciate it. I hope you all got to learn something out of this. I hope this is going to make you confident moving forward into your garlic. And I hope you all have some really great experiences. If you have any further questions, feel free to call the store, send us an email at info@shonnards.com. Additionally, we're constantly posting videos to our social medias and our YouTube. I just did like a minute-long video of me actually planting garlic here on site, so you can kind of get a look at what that looks like in action if you'd like. There's lots of really good information over there. I appreciate you all for showing up today. I think if there's no more questions, I think this is where we're going to end it. And I'll see you all next time.